What it really comes down to is not so much what is the price of silver, because we're talking about Federal Reserve notes. We're talking about a debt instrument. So 65 debt instruments it takes to buy an ounce of silver, and 4,300 debt instruments it takes to buy an ounce of gold. It's not going to be so much what is the price, what is the availability? Can you still get it?
Hello, hello, hello. Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Radio Show, broadcasting from Phoenix, Arizona, where it's either heaven or hell, and today it's heaven. Like best weather in the world. A very special show today because there's a lot of controversy on the issue of, the dollar, which is fake. Then you have crypto, or Bitcoin and Ethereum. And I think there's 2,500 cryptos now. And then gold and silver. So I have Jim Clark is one of my guests today. We've been friends for a long time. For full disclosure, I buy gold and silver from Jim. Of course, it's right down the street from me. And Damon Jones also work together. But it's a very important show because there's another guy called Peter Schiff, who's a friend of mine. And Schiff's always trashing Bitcoin. And as you know, Trump is the Bitcoin president. His two sons, Don Jr. and Eric, who are friends of mine, they made $1 billion in crypto. Not that they need the money, but they're very good business people. So stay tuned because you're going to hear the pros and cons from let's say the gold and silver side versus the crypto side. And for full disclosures, I have both. I don't discriminate between what makes me money. I'm quite happy with it. Just do it illegal, ethically, and morally, and pay your taxes. So, Jim, welcome to the show.
Well, it's great to be here again with you, Robert. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you. And then Damon, thanks for being on the program.
Thanks, Robert. Great to be here.
Let's start with Damon. What's your background? How come you work for gold and silver? I mean, why would you work for this ancient pile of rock?
Well, it's interesting. My background out of college, I became a foreign currency trader. So when I was a foreign currency trader, Forex trading, and you still had the German mark, you still had the lira, you still had all the currencies of Europe that you could trade, and obviously those things have gone by the wayside. But that's how I got myself started in currencies. I then became a financial advisor.
Remember, there was the lira, all those other currencies, but the euro took.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And then I became a stockbroker. I did that for about 14 years. Even when I was a stockbroker, I still recommended precious metals. I felt they were an important part of the wealth insurance part of your portfolio. And about 17 years ago, I stumbled upon Republic Monetary Exchange, and I've been here ever since.
Okay, thank you. And Jim, give us your background, please. And by the way, they're looking right down the street from me on Camelback in Phoenix, Arizona.
Correct. So, Robert, I've been in the precious metals business for 52 years now. So I did this right out of college, and I've never looked back, and I've never regretted 1 minute of it. It's been a great ride, and I wish I had 52 more years to do it. But this has been a nice long ride, and I expect to be here for several more years. But I've seen the gold and silver markets all over the map. I've seen them react and respond to various issues in the news, and the buying and the selling. I've seen it all. You and I had dinner several months ago about the Hunt brothers, how I was involved with selling them about $250 million of the silver that they purchased back in 1979 and right up to 1980. So that was probably one of the more exciting periods in my life, was dealing with the Hunt brothers and watching silver go from $5 to $50 an ounce in just a matter of a year or so. And gold went from about $100 an ounce to $850, also in a matter of a few years. And then I've seen it all over the map ever since then. And we're in a very, very crazy market right now, as we talked about just the other day, especially with silver.
Because there are oil guys who are rich guys, and they thought they could corner the market in silver. And they bought tons and tons of silver. They actually were so rich, they actually tilted the market in their favor. And then somebody shut them down. And I think one of the federal judges says, we put the wrong people in jail. The Hunt brothers were doing it illegally, but the U.S. government came after them and did it illegally. But I remember that time I was just starting out, and I've been buying silver since 1965, and when I saw silver just go from nothing to how much an ounce, Jim? Did they drive it up to?
It's over $65 an ounce. It was close to 67 earlier today, but this
No,
is a record high number today as we tape.
how much did the Hunt brothers drive silver up to?
So they went from $5 an ounce in early 79 until January of 1980. They went from $5 an ounce to 50. And when the thieves on the Board of Governors at COMEX and all of the short sellers decided that they wanted to put the kibosh on the Hunt brothers, they exercised Rule 7, which allowed them to restrict the Hunt brothers from buying any more silver. They could only sell. So if you had short positions in silver, you could buy, but nobody could institute new long positions, including the Hunt brothers. And that's how it went from $50 an ounce to $10 an ounce in just a matter of hours. And they were swindled by the exchanges and the short sellers by $1 to $2 billion is the estimate. But they were doing nothing more than what people are doing today, is that they wanted to hedge their dollars with something of solid value, and that would be silver. In fact, Bunker Hunt told me once that he thought silver was more valuable than gold. And to some respects, he's right, because the the uses for silver are much greater now than ever. You have in the medical field, you have solar panels, iPhones, all of the instruments that we're using now in everyday use is off the charts as to the amount that's needed. And there's a great shortfall from what is being produced each year to what is actually coming to the market. So we're in a very topsy-turvy situation right now in the markets.
Who screwed the Hunt brothers?
It was the exchange and the Board of Governors who were shorting silver all the way up to the top. And they instituted Rule 7, which didn't allow the Hunt brothers to support their positions. And they were controlling roughly $100 million ounces of silver, which was a huge amount at the time. It's not so much today because there's a lot more above ground silver known. But because they were short, they were protecting themselves. And if the Hunts couldn't buy anymore, the only thing that could happen is that the price could come crashing down, and it did just that. And the trade houses, the hedge funds, the various institutions that trade precious metals, they were bailed out of their short positions, which they were deep underwater with, and they came out clean as a whistle. And the Hunt brothers lost $1 to $2 billion, which at that time was a lot of money. Today, it's not so much when you think about it. All the billionaires that are involved in the silver market, that's why I'm saying it's in a topsy-turvy market right now, that you've got all these different reasons for owning silver and people that are shorting silver. And it's like nothing I've ever seen before.
Right. And silver is a structural metal. In other words, it's used, the Chinese are hoarding it right now because if they can have silver at a good price when they're buying even the liquid doré bars and all those things.
Well, not only that, I don't know if you heard, but China's silver export ban starts January 1st.
Yeah. Silver is the most valuable metal. And I agree with the Hunt brothers. I think silver is more valuable than gold. But I started buying it in 65 just because, and this is from Jim Clark here, you hold up a little quarter or a $half. And in 1964, it was silver. Then 65, it turned to copper. And that was Gresham's laws. When the bad money enters the system, good money goes into hiding. So the government has been playing games with money. And silver is such an essential metal for industry versus gold. The other part is that every time you fire a Tomahawk missile into these war areas, I think so many ounces of silver blow up out there. And it takes a long time to find silver and produce silver, and we're burning it up at high speed right now. That's why the Chinese are hoarding it. And so the people hoarding gold are kind of out of it. And then one more, I don't know what you call it, but J.P. Morgan, they got sued how much for manipulating silver?
I think they had to pay a $900 million fine
Nearly
for
$1 billion.
for spoofing silver. Yeah.
Yeah, because the J.P. Morgan was manipulating the price of silver. And guess what? So they sued them to get almost $1 billion in fines. And they're the same guys still selling the SLV, which is fake silver, paper silver. So it's one of the most volatile, misunderstood metals, yet it's structural. It's used in everything we do today. And as we go to AI, artificial intelligence, silver goes up in value, yet the price is suppressed.
That's exactly
So
right.
I think it's one of the most important investments people can make today. So that's my silver.
So if the government weren't printing up so many Federal Reserve notes and with just a printing press and a keystroke, just adding billions and trillions of dollars to the national debt and to their balance sheet, and then buying silver and gold with that paper, we wouldn't have the situation that we're in today, because not only do we have fundamental demand for silver like we've never seen before, but you also have the investors who want out of their paper money and have something that's tangible.
Right.
And I recognized that in 1972 when I bought my first gold, and silver was like $1.25 an ounce, and gold was around $45 an ounce. And we had the problem then when Nixon took us off the gold standard in 1971. A lot of our grandparents that we would recognize today, they were buying silver and gold and passing it on as generational wealth. And we're seeing third generation young people bringing silver and gold that their grandparents had set aside for them back in the early 1970s. And you and I have had that conversation before. We bought our first gold at about the same time in the early 70s, and we have not looked back. And a tube of gold 1 ounce gold pieces costs less than a tube of silver pieces of the same ounces today.
Yeah. So this, before we go to break here, I wrote about it in this book here, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, that savers were losers. The reason I say that is because our illustrious academic system says, save money. And what these idiots in the school system don't realize, that you're not saving money today, you're saving fake money, the US dollar. And as the national debt goes past 38 trillion on one side, but on the balance sheet, our national debt's like 260 trillion. They're going to keep printing more money, and people keep trying to save US dollars or yen or euros and all this. It's really stupid. But they want to save money with fake money. And that's why I want to bring Jim and Damon on, because I think you better understand, because I buy gold, silver, and Bitcoin and Ethereum, and I make money all the time. But why not make money than save fake money? I don't understand people. And silver today, in my opinion, and we don't give recommendations, and we're not an investment advisory show, that I would rather have, everybody can afford silver yet. It's still $65 an ounce. You can still afford that. Where Bitcoin's up at 90,000 and gold's at 4,000. And so even a poor person can afford silver, but they'll hang on to the stupid peso, the yen, the dollar, or the euro. So we come back, we're going into what's better for you. Like I said, I think Peter Schiff is funny that Trump called him a loser because he trashed Bitcoin. So we come back a bit more with Jim Clark and Damon Jones on advantages of gold, silver, and a new field called crypto. Because if you know what you're doing, you can make money in all of it, and you can lose money in all of them.
Can I just say something real quick, Robert, before we break away? And we talked about this before. My book, Real Money for Free People, I talk about the Hunt situation in the book, and I'm recommending it that you could go to our website, realmoneyforfreepeople.com. And if you like, I'll send your listeners a signed copy of this book as a courtesy to you.
You'll send anybody who calls in for the book a signed
Well,
copy.
they could go online. They can subscribe to our newsletter. They can order the book, and I'll do it as a courtesy to you. That I'll send them a signed copy.
And what's the website?
It's realmoneyforfreepeople.com.
That's the name of the website.
Right.
And your company is called Republic Monetary Exchange.
Correct. And that's rmegold.com.
Yeah. So all you people who are losers out there saving dollars, working hard for dollars, or the euro or the yen or the peso, this is your show because you're being screwed because your mommy and daddy told you to work hard for money and pay your taxes. So we come back, more on why you should buy gold, silver, or Bitcoin. We'll be right back.
Let me speak directly to you for a moment, because if you have been paying attention, you know this economy is not healthy. Debt is soaring, the dollar is losing strength, and the AI stock bubble is inflating so fast that even Wall Street is warning investors to slow down. While that happened, gold and silver broke all-time records. Gold over 4,300, silver doubling past 60. Markets do not move like that unless something deeper is shifting under the surface. That is why major banks like Morgan Stanley now recommend putting up to 20% of a portfolio in the precious metals. They see the same risk I do. The question is not whether the system will shake, it's whether your retirement can survive. My audience has been treated well by Priority Gold. They have thousands of 5-star reviews, and Forbes ranks them as their top gold IRA partner. In a fragile economy, trust matters. Their gold and silver info guide walks you through 3 simple steps to add gold and silver to your IRA or 401k tax and penalty free. And the free, no pressure portfolio review will show you exactly where you stand heading into 2026. No guessing, just clarity. Call 866-703-9895 for your free guide and review. That's 866-703-9895. Or take out your phone, open a text message, type guide, and send it to 24999. Again, guide to 24999. Prepare now. Waiting has never protected anyone.
Welcome back to today's very important show, the Rich Dad Radio Show. Not really a radio, it's a podcast show. But we have my old friend Jim Clark and Damon Jones. And we're talking about, is gold, silver, or Bitcoin better for you? And gold and silver have been money for thousands of years. Bitcoin is about 15 years. And money is flying all over. The reason that's happening is 1971, Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard and money became debt. And then what happened in 64, 65, they took our real silver money and they turned it into copper. So they've been playing games with our money. And when you play games with money, the rich get richer and the poor middle class get poorer. So that's what we see happening today. I can't believe the homelessness spreading across this country, because every time you print money, guys like us get richer, but the working class people still working for money, getting poorer. So let's go into the future, since silver and gold have been ancient money. So Damon, what's happening in the future? What do you see happening now? What are the Chinese or Samsung?
So yeah, there's a lot going on in Asia with regard to silver. And you talked earlier about Bunker Hunt and how he felt that silver was more valuable for gold than gold. And part of the reason for that is silver is used in so much industry. And when you dig gold out of the ground, guess what? It ends up in a vault somewhere. When you dig silver out of the ground, at least half of it is being used in something. Well, that's just getting the demand for that physical silver is just going up higher and higher for industrial purposes. So what China has done.
One thing, Damon, is the more we go into the information age, the more valuable silver becomes than gold.
That's right. Because silver, silver allows everything to function, whether it's your semiconductors, whether it's your solar panels, electricity, you need solar.
Rockets.
And with the new technology that's coming out, the battery technology and the solar technology, that's just requiring more and more silver. So what China has done is basically understands, like we understand now, that silver is a critical mineral. And they've proceeded to put an export ban on silver starting January 1st.
The Chinese did.
And this also coincides with BYD, which is a Chinese company, which is the largest manufacturer of batteries. They are going to be introducing the silver solid state battery. and it requires a tremendous amount of silver to make these batteries, but they're really efficient. We're talking 1,000-mile range. We're talking 10-minute charges. These are going to be the batteries that everybody's going to want for their EVs. Well, the key is you got to have the silver. And that's why companies that are in China, in Japan, instead of going to the LBMA, instead of going to COMEX, they're actually going to the sources of silver now. They need to tie up that silver for their critical components. So they're going right to the source. We're just talking about one company, but there are literally thousands of companies that need silver, and they're going to go where the silver is being mined, and they're going to buy it before we have the opportunity to get it, if they can.
Right. Jim, any comments on the future of silver? Is ancient, you know?
Yeah, silver has actually been around and used as money longer than gold has. We know at least 6,000 years with gold and probably another 2,000 to 4,000 with silver. And a lot of people call it the poor man's gold, or you and I call them the silver stackers, when you can have a tube of silver pieces for, $1,200 to $1,500, as opposed to one gold piece. You could get maybe a quarter of an ounce or a half an ounce for the same amount of money that you would pay for a tube of silver eagles. So I like both of them, and the attention to silver has been like nothing else I've ever seen in my 52 years. That there are more players in the market. There are a lot of paper contracts that are coming back to roost now. And I think that's why we see the price at $65. It's not going to surprise me to see in the first quarter next year silver well over 100. And I think maybe on its way to $200 or $300, maybe not next year, but sometime in the near future. But it's not that silver has become more valuable, although it is that. The price is reflective because of the paper money that has become worth less and less. That's why we have record prices. That investors all over the world are saying, we don't want America's paper dollars. And as Dan was talking before about the currencies that have gone by the wayside over the years, just since he was in the foreign exchange business, the dollar at some point is going to go by the wayside. And who's ever holding them is going to be holding the bag. If you're holding gold and silver, it's an asset that speaks for itself. It's it's an asset that has intrinsic value within its own metal content, and it never goes to zero. The value of gold and silver will always be something in relationship to the medium of exchange that we use. In our case, it's the US dollar. And if they keep printing up more and more dollars, I believe that the attention to gold and silver will be much greater than ever.
Right.
And I also think Bitcoin, that when it came around 16 years ago, it was because the same investors that are buying silver and gold, they said, well, can we have something else that is outside of the dollar? And the Bitcoin having 21 million units maximum, that's how it came about. So that's the granddaddy of all of the crypto money. And we've had 2,500 others that have come on board since then. Well, that's going to increase as the technology comes about to create more crypto money. There's going to be more and more of these cryptos. So it's almost like there's going to be an unlimited amount of crypto money in circulation. Whereas gold and silver, you've got to go actually mine that, not mine it in the sense that you mine a Bitcoin and you use a lot of energy to do so. You're going to have to use a lot of energy to dig down and find the gold and silver, and the earth only has so much of it. And once it's gone, it's pretty much gone. And it's not even going to be so much, what is the price of silver? What is the availability of it? What is the availability of gold? And it may not be there in the not too distant future, because who's going to want to trade their gold and silver and get Federal Reserve notes that can be printed unlimited amounts at any given point?
Do you own any Bitcoin or Ethereum and all that stuff?
I own none of it, and I never have. I missed
Damon, do you own any?
I sold my Bitcoin. I sold it early. I used to mine for Bitcoin. I never bought any Bitcoin. But
So I own
computers.
Bitcoin. I made a fortune in it.
Yeah.
But you have to know when to enter and when to exit. And there's a difference between, the big difference too is that with silver and gold, you have storage problems. I had a friend who stood on stage one day and he says, I keep all my gold and silver at my house. I said, why don't you tell people to come on over, because that's what they're going to do. And so Bitcoin's advantage is it's basically electronic money. And it can hide and you can carry it in your wallet. So there's advantages to both. But you still have to understand there's no such thing as safe money. Even gold and silver goes up and down. And today, after the Hunt brothers tried to corner the market, silver is still around where it was 20, 30 years ago. And everybody in the world can afford an ounce of silver, $64. It may take them a year to pay for it, some of these people, but it's better to have silver than paper. The
Totally
biggest
agree.
storage. So, I mean, how much do people pay for storage of gold and silver, Jim? Because
I don't know. I don't get into those topics I don't want to know where people put their gold and silver, and that's their business. I recommend typically a floor safe or something secure, and you have an alarm and all of that. But I don't know what they pay for storage fees for it.
you don't want to store it at home because you're inviting people over, for entertainment here.
You just want to be very discreet with what you own, right? Especially if it's a physical asset.
Well,
like gold
my
and
biggest
silver.
problem is I started buying silver in 65. And then Jim knows I'd go to his store, Republic Monetary Exchange on Camelback in Phoenix. And they come in these grain boxes. And pretty soon these freaking grain boxes, so they were stacking to the ceiling. What am I going to do with this here? So I had to go rent a vault outside of Phoenix to hide it there. And it's a good problem because I've made a lot of money just buying the stuff. But storage also becomes an expense. You don't have a Bitcoin or Ethereum or crypto and all that.
Well, that
And
is the bad news, that it's hard to store silver, but the good news is it's priced in ounces. So if you have a lot of silver and you have a lot of pounds of silver, you're in good shape no matter where you have it.
And the reason I bought silver eagles, US coins, is because if the dollar did collapse or the yen collapsed or the euro collapsed, I can still walk around with silver dollars in my hand and trade. But you walk around with a dead money like the Weimar Republic, which brought, Weimar Republic is what brought Hitler to power. They printed so much of it, they were using paper for firewood. And that's what I think might happen. An outside chance is you'll be having so much hyperinflation with US dollars or euro or yen or pesos that you'll be using it for firewood. But gold and silver will be gold and silver. Any comments on that, Damon?
Well, what I would say is with Bitcoin, yeah, it's very portable. You can move money, large amounts of money very quickly over borders. Doesn't seem to slow it down. But the thing about Bitcoin is it was first. Early adopters. It represents over 50% of crypto market cap is in Bitcoin. But ultimately, Bitcoin does not pay a dividend. Bitcoin has no cash flow. Ultimately, if I was to calculate using fundamental financial calculations on the present value of Bitcoin, every calculation would be zero because there's no cash flow, there's no dividend, and you can't use it utility-wise for anything other than to move money around. So I think ultimately, as cryptos start to be asset-backed, like your gold cryptos, your silver cryptos, your soybean cryptos, whatever happens to come out, I think the asset-backed cryptos is where we're headed. And the fiat cryptos are going to go the way of the dollar.
Yeah. And one more thing that's happened, I was listening to Jim Rickards. And what happens is this Ethereum is like blockchain. So what it does is, let's say the three of us, Jim, Damon, and I, invented the Jim, Damon, Robert crypto. We would use Ethereum to back it with gold. In other words, it's like the Ethereum becomes like the storage vault. And we back it with that. And what Jim Rickards said, is a friend of mine, he goes, you're going to see a scandal so big because they're called stable coins. And every crook wants an opportunity to lie to you. So Ethereum is going to be big time. I own some of that too. But the fraud has just begun. So that's why I'd rather have gold and silver, even if I have storage problems with it, because it'll always be money. It's been money for thousands and thousands of years. And silver is still affordable. And yet people would rather have cash. Makes no sense to me. So final words, Jim. Final words. We're not going to end.
Tier one asset. So there's no counterparty risk for anybody. That if you have it and you have possession of it.
Explain counterparty.
So that, Damon, you go into that.
So counterparty risk is basically when you own an asset like a stock or a bond. The stock or bond only has value as long as your counterparty is, or the other person, let's say the CEO of the company isn't cooking the books to make your stock have value. Or if the company that you lent money to fails to make an interest payment or doesn't make their bond payment, that's counterparty risk. All of a sudden that asset isn't worth anything. Well, with gold and silver, they've already dug it out of the ground. You can now hold it in your hand. So it is independent of another person's promise. Nobody has to make a promise for gold to have value. You already dug it out of the ground.
Yeah.
Whereas a stock, bond, all that, someone has to perform for your asset to have value.
Right, like the U.S. bond, they say safe. I go, the U.S. is the biggest debtor nation in world history. How can the bond be safe? I mean, people are that freaking stupid. You know, give me a break. And China and Japan are dumping U.S. bonds to buy gold. Central banks are dumping bonds to buy gold. And people are saying, oh, bonds are safe. Only a loser would think that.
So when you have all this currency out there in the world, and whether it's crypto or whether it's actual currency of the realm, there's not enough gold and silver to go around for everybody that's ultimately going to want it. So I'm asked frequently, don't you think that gold and silver is topped out and it's only going to go lower from here? Well, we had a podcast 3 years ago, Robert, when silver and gold were less than half the price that it is now, and that question came up. I said, no, this is just revving up. This is just the beginning. That investors all over the world are saying, I want something other than some paper promise.
Yeah.
And they want the actual physical gold and silver in their hand. And that's the hedge against inflation that we talked about back in 1972.
Right. So let's just complete this conversation. It's gold, silver, Bitcoin, crypto, Ethereum, and all this stuff. I own all of it. You know, so Peter Schiff trashing crypto, multiple loser. I think it's one of the funniest things I've seen in a long time. And Peter's a friend of mine. He's a smart boy, but he talks this book. And, you know, it's only one way with Peter. It's his way. But the thing that cracks me up is with Bitcoin, you have to know when to buy and when to sell. And with gold and silver, I hold on forever. That's a big, big difference because it'll go up and down in price. But in my opinion, it'll always be money. Final words, Jim, will it always be money?
So what it really comes down to is not so much what is the price of silver, because we're talking about Federal Reserve notes. We're talking about a debt instrument. So 65 debt instruments it takes to buy an ounce of silver, and 4,300 debt instruments it takes to buy an ounce of gold. It's not going to be so much what is the price, what is the availability? Can you still get it at any price? And if you won't take dollars, what will you take? You want to be paid in Bitcoin or Ethereum or something else? And I think that the cryptocurrencies and gold and silver are very compatible because they came about and people buy them because they don't trust the currency of the realm, because governments have a way of printing up a lot more than they have something to back it with. And I wanted to show this. This is a $10 gold certificate from 1922. This was not money at all. This was merely a certificate for money for a gold coin that was on deposit at a bank. And that's how this paper money thing came about, is that people were trading their gold certificates or silver certificates up until 1964. And they weren't moving the silver and gold at all. Now people are saying, I want the gold and silver in my hand, not the paper money that doesn't represent anything.
Right. Damon, final word.
Yeah, I agree with Jim. I mean, money is gold and it's God's money. I've heard you say it many times, Robert. Gold and silver is God's money, and I trust God.
Yeah. So thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for your wealth of information. A lot of choices today, but I would rather I want something that God made: gold, silver, and Bitcoin. I trade fast. I have to know when to enter and when to exit. That's the big difference. So thanks very much, gentlemen.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Robert.
Welcome back. I want to thank Jim Clark and Damon for being part of this show. Like I said, gold and silver have been in there for thousands of years, and Bitcoin's 15 years now. You make your choice up. Again, Rich Dad makes no recommendations. I tell people what I do. I own all three: gold, silver, Bitcoin, and Ethereum. And the thing I want to say about this one, behind me is a cash flow board game, and this book here is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's still number one of the 25 years. The importance of Rich Dad, Poor Dad is, what are you teaching your kids about money? You see, my poor dad taught me to go to school, get a job, and save money. He taught my brothers and sisters to go to school, get money, get your PhDs and all that. So my brothers and sisters all have master's degrees. I'm the stupid one in my family. But they have no money because they work hard for money, the US dollar. Whereas Rich Dad, who started teaching his son and I about money at age 10, I understood that money was important. In our family, being Christians, they said, well, love of money is the root of all evil. That's what we taught at our family. And get your PhD. And my Rich Dad says, understand that, you play Monopoly in real life. So money's just a game. So today I own 4 greenhouses, red hotels, gold, silver, and crypto. So what are you teaching your kids? Go to school and work hard and save money and pay taxes? Don't be a loser. Be a good parent and teach your kids differently. Thank you very much.
This podcast is a presentation of Rich Dad Media Network.